poll. And while Mitt Romney and now says his campaign is about the 100%, the fallout continues from his comments about the 47% of Americans who pay no federal income tax. And entitlement culture now is at the core of the controversy. Here to debate, Curtis Dubé of the Heritage Foundation and Christian Dorsey of the Economic Policy Institute. Thanks for being with us, gentlemen. And Chris, let's start with you. First of all, is what Romney said, complained about, basically right?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the number is not in dispute. 47% of tax filers have no federal income tax liability. The question is really what should we do about that, or why did that result? There's so many people not paying federal income taxes today because the economy's been so weak for several years. That number would come down if the economy could ever shake the weight of Obama's economic policies.
Okay, and Christian Dorsey, more on the left side of this debate, is what Romney said, complained about, basically right or wrong?
Well, it's completely wrong. It's a distorted picture. 47% may not pay income taxes, but most of them pay payroll taxes. And not all of the 47% are actually people who are low income. Some are actually quite wealthy. And what Mr. Romney doesn't mention is that many more people, disproportionately wealthy, receive most of the benefits from all of our tax expenditures, like mortgage interest tax deductions, for example.
Which benefit the vast middle class that Obama keeps wanting to build. Let's just look at the need first,
Mostly
guys. And we ran this on the screen. 49% of U.S. households now do get some form of government benefit, and you can see that breakdown. 26% Medicaid for the poor, 16% Social Security, 15% Medicare. But then let's look at the payment side of the equation. I mean, guys, it does turn out, Curtis, that indeed 47% don't pay any federal income tax, right? Is that a problem?
Right, again, that number's not in dispute. We can talk about the composition of it, but 47% don't pay federal income taxes. They do pay other taxes. There's no doubt about that. But when it comes to the federal income tax, which funds national defense, homeland security, food and drug safety, education, welfare, they're not chipping in anything for those programs. That leads to them not having any skin in the game when it comes to people here in Washington wanting to expand those programs even further.
Christian?
It's just breeding a culture of dependency. Our index of dependency in 2012 showed that 67.3 million Americans were dependent on the government in one way or another. That was a 8% increase over the year before.
Curtis,
so the federal government is tracking the growth
in
and dependency.
Curtis, you were right. You were right the first time. These people are receiving government benefits because they are low income. They are low income because the economy has failed them. For example, if we had a minimum wage which kept pace with inflation, we would be able to reduce the number of people receiving government benefits and put that burden where it rightly belongs, in the economic sector. This is not a function of failed government policies. It's the result of an economy that's not quite working the way it ought to.
But Christian, only a few percentage points of the population is ever on minimum wage, and they stay there only a year or two of their entire careers. And studies show that raising minimum wage costs you hundreds of thousands of jobs. That is not the answer here, Christian. Is it a problem, Christian, that 47% of Americans pay no federal income tax? Is that a problem?
The problem is they don't make enough money to pay federal income taxes. That is the issue.
That's true.
That's something that Governor Romney doesn't seem to get. The issue is not with them. They're not doing anything wrong. The economy has failed them. These people would gladly pay income taxes if they earned an income which allowed them to.
Curtis, you have to agree with Christian on that one, don't you?
Well, again, if you were going to build an income tax from scratch, it's reasonable to exempt a certain amount from paying federal income tax. But you would never set it up so that almost half didn't pay anything. Now, again, if the economy started growing again, certainly more people would pay income tax. We'd have fewer non-payers. But it wouldn't get down to an acceptable level. We still need to have tax reform so everyone has some buy-in for the size of government. And that doesn't mean raising taxes. It means that we'd fold the payroll tax into the income tax so that everyone is paying some for entitlements and paying for all the other programs the federal government pays for.
Christian Dorsey, the top 1% of earners in this country, they control 19% of annual income, and they pay close to 40% of federal income tax. Now, President Obama says they don't pay their fair share. Please tell me, instead of that 40% of federal income tax that the top 1% pays, Christian, what is the fair share? What percentage should it be?
Well, the 40% is actually roughly fair because 40% of all of the income gains that we've had in the economy over the course of the last 30 years have gone to the top 1%. So, in fact, they're not paying a disproportionately high percentage of the burden.
But it shouldn't be higher?
Well, once you also factor in the fact that we spend so much in tax expenditures that disproportionately accrue to the wealthy, they're certainly not paying their fair share. You get to a situation where 80% of all of our tax expenditures go to the top 20%.
Okay, and they're paying double what they bring in income in terms of share of it. All right, thank you very much, Curtis Dubé and Christian Dorsey. Good weekend, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.